Hello everyone, this is Prateek. I'm going to be taking you on a journey of evolution of fashion. Fashion, as we know, has evolved over centuries, but right now we are going to focus and touch upon Rose Bertin, who was the couturier, fashionista, minister of fashion in Louis XVI's court, and she was the primary creator for Marie Antoinette. So Rose Bertin started as a trimster. She used to take trims door to door, selling them, taking old garments and changing them, applying new trims to them, reviving and upscaling those garments. Earlier in those days, silhouettes would be the same, but the trims would change and it becomes a new dress in itself. So, Rose Bertin to Cristobal Balenciaga. In this course, we are going to just have a quick overview of how couture came into existence and how the story of fashion formed over the 20th, late 19th to 20th century. So let's move ahead. Shaping eras and defining style. Fashion is more than just clothing, it's a profound reflection of society, politics, and culture. Spanning from the opulent 18th century to the transformative 20th century, we will explore the rise of couture, the impact of the Industrial Revolution, and the dawn of modernism. Discover how key figures not only designed garments but reshaped the very concept of fashion as an art form, influencing how we dress and express ourselves even today. So fashion is the mirror of the society. It reflects the culture. It reflects what's happening today. When Ukraine and Russia war began, a lot of Ukrainian designers started bringing war into their work, and they put up shows where which indicates the cruelty of the war and how Ukrainians were suffering. Similarly, any kind of a global impact, any kind of current happenings around the world acts as an inspiration as well for fashion. Wars change clothing styles. When the First World War, Second World War came, it just changed the way we wear clothes. So situations, it's the society, what's happening around is being reflected, the politics and the culture is being reflected through fashion as societal mirror. Fashion acts as a societal mirror. um, Era of transformation from couture's birth to the modern silhouette evolution. That is something we're going to go forward with. And artistry in fabric, pioneers who elevated, fabric art. We must conceptualize and look into it. Rose Bertin from 1747 to 1813, the first celebrity couturier. Rose Bertin, famously known as the Minister of Fashion, as I told you, to Queen Mary Antoinette. She revolutionized dressmaking by elevated it from a mere craft to an esteemed art and profession. She, she used fashion as a tool for political power and identity, intricately wearing personal expression with the political climate of the French court. Her innovative approach and direct influence on royal style cemented her legacy as the first true celebrity couturier, setting the precedent for the future designers to be recognized as influential artists. Early 19th century Empire and Romantic eras. The early 19th century witnessed a dramatic shift in fashion, marked by the elegance of the Empire era and expressive flair for the Romantic period. The Empire line, inspired by classical antiquity, featured high waisted, flowing gowns that offered a liberating silhouette after decades of courtesy. As the century progressed, the Romantic era embraced more elaborate style with dramatic puff sleeves, a return to refined courtesy, corsetry, for a defined waist and intricate embellishments. This period also saw the burgeoning growth of fashion magazine. The early magazines started coming up, detailed illustrations on the cover of those magazines came up, making trends more accessible and influencing a broader audience than ever before. So the magazines acted what Instagram does today. The magazines were small booklets or booklets which can travel, reach afar of places, bring access to people who did not have, access to arts or fashion as such. People who were not living in Paris, people, let's say someone living in Argentina, was able to see what was happening in the Paris fashion scene through the magazine. Someone living in India could those who could afford and were influential were able to understand what's happening in Paris, in the world of fashion globally through certain magazines which were imported, with a lot of hassle. So the magazines were the first publishing unit for fashion, really. And that's what happened in the early 19th century, especially with the colonization and the global aspect of the world being connected together, and uh, a trend of trying to be more European. The other cultures started referencing, and magazines became a starting point there. Charles Frederick Worth, 1825 to 1895, the father of haute couture. Um, Worth was an Englishman who established his fashion house in Paris, is widely credited as the father of couture, father of haute couture. He revolutionized the industry by being the first to brand fashion, literally signing his garments with a label, thereby establishing the concept of a designer signature. Worth had high respect for garment construction and the whole process in which you conceive couture, and he thought that it is his art form, and just like a painter signs their painting, he would like to have his signature onto his creation, and that began as the first designer signature to the garments itself and leading on to having a label. Worth pioneered seasonal collection and was renowned for his elaborate crinolines. He established the House of Worth, where all the conceptualization to create those special one of a kind garments for really special clients appeared. And his innovations firmly established couture as a designer led enterprise, shifting the focus from client dictated style to artistically conceived fashion. Before Worth, there were garment construction, garment makers, tailors, couturiers, but they would always be focused on what the client really wants, and everything from the color to the silhouette to the trim, everything would be dictated by the client itself. But Worth changed it. He conceived ideas, he created concepts, and he put it out there for the world to understand his artistic caliber, which was far more than just a consumer led garment creation. Worth is credited to bring fashion under a brand, under a house, and the House of Worth pioneered this way of creating fashion. So that's why Charles Frederick Worth is known as the father of haute couture. So, mid to late 19th century innovation and contradiction. The later half of the 19th century was a period of fascinating contrast in fashion, characterized by dramatic silhouettes of the bustle era, um, which emphasized exaggerated rear fullness. This period also saw significant technological advancements like the widespread adoption of sewing machines, which made clothing production faster and more accessible. The advent of synthetic dyes introduced vibrant new palette of colors to fashion, While the rise of department stores democratized shopping, these innovations simultaneously fostered fashion democratization through ready-made garments and solidified the exclusivity of haute couture for the elite, creating a dual landscape in the fashion world. So earlier, there was no as such ready to wear garments which were being sold, and couture could only be, fostered by those who could afford. But adoption of sewing machine and advent of sewing machine itself created a faster pace of garment construction, which provided options for common people, people who did not have means to buy couture could also have new garments today. So that's the shift and change of the 19th century. It was a time when globalization was happening. Colonization already connected the world in certain way, and the influence of Europe coming into the world was very, very prominent. And this democratization of fashion itself began through the globalization of that era. Paul Poiret, a pivotal figure in early 20th century fashion, famously freed women from corsets, introducing revolutionary draped silhouettes that allowed for unprecedented freedom of movement. His designs were heavily influenced by Orientalism and the emerging Art Deco style, bringing exoticism and geometric sophistication to Western fashion. Remember that that was the era when Art Deco was also being conceived into the architectural movement. So, whenever there's, and just like we talked earlier, the political, the cultural significance of that time reflects into the fashion as well. And Art Deco was emerging as an artistic language, and Poiret harnessed it into his craft of making clothes. Poiret also pioneered theatrical fashion shows, transforming static presentations into dynamic, immersive experiences beyond clothing. He was an early pioneer of lifestyle branding, expanding his empire into perfumes and interior design, demonstrating a holistic vision of the modern lifestyle. Coco Chanel, 1883 to 1971, she was also coined as the architect of modern femininity. Gabrielle Coco Chanel redefined women's fashion with a philosophy of simplicity, comfort, and modernity. She championed practical yet elegant designs, famously introducing jersey dresses, the iconic little black dress, and the revolutionary Chanel No. 5 perfume. Chanel's aesthetic catered to the evolving needs of independent women, offering sporty elegance and casual chic that reflected their active lifestyles. Her timelines creations liberated women from restrictive garments, setting a new standard for effortless sophistication that remains influential today. Also, the war, the Second World War, the First World War, they both influenced and changed the way the women wear clothes and their role in the society. So now the women were going out. Now they had a job to do. They had to take buses. They had to, do multiple things which they were not doing before. It was they needed garments which were more practical, where they could walk, they could take the subway, they could take taxis and can support their work lifestyle. So Chanel understood the change, she understood the needs of time, and she understood that the clothing also needs to change according to the time to create a modern image of a modern woman. Well, this is Madeleine Vionnet, 1876 to 1975. Um, she's one of the most influential fashion designers. Even today, if I look into Issey Miyake, being inspired for Pleat Please has somewhere roots into Madeleine Vionet's work. Cristobal Balenciaga did a lot of exploration somewhere, also has certain influence of Madeleine Vionnet. So she was the master of the bias cut, the queen of the bias cut. She was also coined as the architect of fashion, was a true master of the bias cut, a revolutionary technique that allowed fabric to drape and flow sensually over the body. Her gowns, inspired by Greek sculptures and a desire for freedom of movement, became synonymous with elegance and fluidity. Vionnet innovated by draping directly onto the mannequin. She was, trying to find different ways of clothes making than the traditional way of pattern making. And her meticulous approach and innovative use of bias cut profoundly influenced modern minimalism and continue to inspire contemporary evening wear, demonstrating her enduring legacy. Madeleine Vionnet had a troubled life. She used to wash clothes in an asylum for decades, and she would repair the garments which were torn while washing. And one day she decided to change her life and started, asked for apprenticeship to a tailor, and there, after learning certain tailoring techniques, she decided to start her own. She was always paranoid that her garments would be copied by other designers. So she created really complicated garments. They may look very simple, but there's hyper calculative aspect to her garments, the fall. They're quite, that's why she was known as the architect of fashion, because just like an architect, she would look into the form, she would look into the material, and she would, conceptualize highly complex silhouettes, which would be almost impossible for anyone to copy, and even sometimes impossible for her to recreate herself what she has created before. So that was a pioneer, Madeleine Vionnet. Some say that she lived exactly for 100 years, and certain accounts tell us that she made her first dress at the age of 40, and yet she was one of those most influential people in fashion. She never thought of other designers or other couturiers as friends, but she did interact with Cristobal Balenciaga and had a very respectful friendship with him, where they would discuss ideas or share their views of world. They never really collaborated on collections, but they would exchange their ideology with each other. And that was Madeleine Vionnet, the queen of the bias cut. And even today, when we study Vionnet, it's an endless ocean where classical antiquities of ancient Greek and Roman sculptures come into 19th century modern women's clothing. Just like Madeleine Vionnet, there's another pioneer, Madame Grey. We don't hear Madame Grey's name in today's, fashion world so much, but she was one of a kind designers. There's no one like her. She used to be known as the sculptor of silk. She would just take the fabric and sculpt till a form appeared. Madame Grey, born as Germaine Emily Krebs, was renowned for her exquisite drape and pleated gowns, deeply inspired by the timeless beauty of classical antiquity. For her, couture was a form of timeless sculpture, with each garment a meticulous, crafted work of art. She famously preferred the purity of form over fleeting trends, creating garments that resembled living statues, fluid, graceful, and profoundly elegant. Her work archived a sublime balance of restraints and sensuality, cementing her legacy as a designer who masterfully manipulated fabric to create architectural yet utterly wearable masterpieces. Madame Grey's sculptures were so elegant that they looked like poetry on a body, poetry in silk, and the way she sculpted them, the meticulous techniques of pinching and pleating the fabric to create a desired fall, a desired structure was created uniquely by Madame Gray, and she also, just like Madeleine Vionnet, brought in the ancient classical Greek and Roman statuesque elements into her clothing style. Madame Gray was more of a purist, so her idea of a form, her idea of elegance had something to do with just the manipulation of the fabric. There were almost less to no embellishment, where the fabric itself takes the master place. The masterpiece becomes the masterpiece in itself. That was the great Madame Gray. Wow, so we have reached to the point to which I was waiting for a while now. It's icons of couture shaping modern fashion, and somehow the credit goes to two major designers. One is Elsa Schiaparelli, and another one is Cristobal Balenciaga. And there are a few more designers in between, and I'm going to take you through that journey. And we are going to do this in detail in the next episodes. This is just an overview of evolution of fashion, where we are going to decode each designer as an episode separately. So let's go over it, explore the revolutionary visions of designers who transformed fashion into an art form, from the whimsical surrealism of Elsa Schiaparelli to the architectural mastery of Cristobal Balenciaga. So Elsa Schiaparelli, and sometimes I feel like we have a personal relationship, as if when we study Schiaparelli, we empathize with her choices, her artistic decisions to a level it feels like as if she's a friend. She's the friend to the world, and she had a vision for the world, and the world respected that vision very much. A daring rival to Coco Chanel, Elsa Schiaparelli injected wit and artistic provocation into haute couture. Her collaboration with surrealist artists like Salvador Dali and Jean Cocteau birthed iconic pieces that blurred the lines between fashion and fine art. Schiaparelli, you're looking at the shoe hat, which is supposed to be a shoe worn on the feet, how the form ends up on a head and becomes a hat itself is conceptualized by Schiaparelli. You see these divers as buttons for the garments, as if they're taking a dive, or they're gymnasts, silhouettes of the body becoming buttons. One of her recent collection, like one of her first collections, were thematic collection. Before Schiaparelli, designers made collection, but they were not cohesive collections. They were garments, different garments, let's say birds. So one garment is the peacock dress, one could be a swan, one could be some other bird. But when Schiaparelli started creating collection, she took the inspiration as cosmos or the constellations, and all the garments were inspired from this has a cohesive inspiration and has a narration to tell. So today the world makes cohesive garments based on a theme, a thematic presentation, or a inspiration based collection. The credit goes to Schiaparelli. She was the first one to do that, which the whole world follows, from Europe to India to Nigeria to Philippines to whatnot. All collections, all the way of making a collection, which is a cohesive output of garments, is coined somewhere to Elsa Schiaparelli. We are going to study Schiaparelli in detail, her surrealistic approach in detail, and how her garments were influential enough to have a political views throughout the world. That was Elsa Schiaparelli. Fashion shifting tides, the 1920s to 1930s. The roaring 20s brought radical change with flapper dresses, shorter hemlines, and a sense of liberation. The economic turmoil of the Great Depression led to more subdued yet elegant style, embracing sleek bias cuts and allure of Hollywood glamour. Paris remained the undisputed fashion capital, setting global trends. This era saw a fascinating paradox. While economic hardships took hold, the escapism offered by cinema fueled a desire for aspirational fashion. Designers adopted creating accessible yet chic designs that resonated with the changing social landscape. The streamlined silhouettes of the 1930s paved the way for the future design innovations. Christian Dior. In 1947, Christian Dior unveiled his revolutionary new look, a stark contrast to wartime austerity, characterized by cinched waists, padded hips, and voluminous skirts. It celebrated femininity and luxury, becoming a symbol of post war optimism and restoring Paris's dominance in haute couture. The new look was defined by an hourglass silhouette, tiny waist, and full skirt, symbol of hope, optimized luxury, and femininity after years of wartime rationing. Global empires, Dior quickly expanded and established its presence throughout the world. So Dior had this idea of nostalgia he wanted to bring to the post-war Europe, where he wanted to remind people of how beautiful, elegant their lives were before the war, a reminiscence of Belle Epoque. He wanted to bring it into the 47 onwards, 1950s fashion. We are going to study Dior in detail, of course, in the coming episodes. And this is where he used to. So during the wartime, there were rations on how much fabric a designer could use to create a garment. But in 1945, the Second World War got over, and 1947, Dior started using like 30 yards of fabric to make one skirt again, one full skirt, and bring in the opulent idea of how clothes were made, especially for the elegant and chic women of that time. Cristobal Balenciaga, the master of couture. As Chanel said, he's the master of all of us. And Madeleine Vionnet used to refer to him as a dear friend. Cristobal Balenciaga, revered as the master of couture, Balenciaga revolutionized fashion with his sculptural architectural designs, his radical silhouettes, including the sack dress, cocoon coat, and the balloon skirt, showcased unparalleled precision, tailoring, and an innovative approach to form. Balenciaga collaborated with Abram, the textile manufacturer from Switzerland, to create really special fabrics which were only made for him and were never recreated again. Even today, we are not able to recreate those fabrics like Zagar. And Balenciaga had his own take on femininity. He used to say that to wear his clothes, women do not need to be beautiful. They need to wear his clothes and they will become beautiful. And Deanna Vreeland, the editor-in-chief of Harper Bazaar and then Vogue America, used to say, if you wear Balenciaga, you are the only woman in the room. So Balenciaga's clothing, his silhouettes, his idea of femininity was so special that all the couturiers of his time, including Dior, Chanel, Schiaparelli, everyone used to look upon him as the master of all of us. That's what Chanel said once upon a time. We are going to study Balenciaga in the next episodes, and if possible, probably in few episodes, because if I study other designers, I would also touch back on how Balenciaga must have influenced certain, portions to a designer's choice, artistic choice, or a silhouette choice today. So let me sum up this one for you all. From Bertin to Balenciaga, legacy of innovation. Rose Bertin, 18th century, fashion as a tool of power and aristocratic display. Charles Frederick Worth, 19th century, established haute couture system and the concept of the designer. Paul Poiret, early 20th century, introduced theatrical modernism and liberated women from corsets. Coco Chanel, early 20th century, pioneered functional elegance and modern casual wear. Vionnet and Madame Grey, mid 20th century, masters of draping, creating fluid, body skimming designs. Elsa Schiaparelli, mid 20th century, infused surreal imagination and artistic provocation into fashion. Christian Dior, mid 20th century, redefined post war femininity with the opulent new look. Cristobal Balenciaga, mid 20th century, achieved architectural modernism through sculptural silhouettes and innovative textile application. So let's conclude it here. Fashion as craft and art, from ornamental excesses to sculptural purity. The journey of haute couture reflects society's evolution, shaping not just clothing, but culture and individuality. These iconic designers have cemented fashion's legacy as both a meticulous craft and a profound art form. Further reading and image sources, you can reach out to Victoria and Albert Museum's archive, Muse Galleria, Paris Fashion Museum. Check out Metropolitan Museum in New York. If you want to look into the Eastern Oriental history, you should also check out Kyoto Museum in Japan, with archives spanning from all over the world, including the Western archives are there. Scholarly works, you can check out renowned fashion historians such as Valerie Steele, Carolyn Evans, or Harold Koda. You could also look into many more archives which are available online, and also each house, each designer we have introduced. You could check out the websites of the websites of the house, talks about the legacy, and go deeper into understanding how they existed and how they influence us even today. Thank you so much for bringing me your attention to this course, as I hope it helps you understand and get a deeper insight into how fashion has evolved over time, and helps you, enables you with the knowledge to help fashion transform into your lifetime.